Hey, it's Dante, and I'm back with another fire alarm review. Today, I'm not going to be just reviewing one alarm, I'm reviewing an entire series of notification appliances that were in production from the year 2000 to 2020. That's been around for that lasted for 2 decades. So, let me get my screwdriver here. So this is the Xenon lineup of the Genesis series with the Xenon strobe. So I'm gonna be discussing the advantages, the handicaps, and what I personally have to call out about the Genesis series. So, anyways, they're really nice looking alarms. I really like the stylish look to them, especially the cool designs with the lens. And it's for the wall mount units. And especially I'm going to start out with the G1 series, the horn strobes and the remote strobes and chime strobes. Which I don't have a chime strobe yet, but sooner or later I feel like I should get one sooner or later. Oh, sorry. They are really, the best part about it is that they are really small, they're compact, and that they are not, therefore they can blend in with its surroundings. It's also very low profile, so it allows them to blend in with their surroundings with such ease, so that they wouldn't be noticed right away until there's an actual emergency. So anyways, this particular unit is a model number G1R-FHDVM. This one's a busted unit because the horn does not properly output to its proper decibel output. So you'll notice that there's no mounting plate required with these units. You can just pry the covers off. With depressing these tabs. Tabs up the top. One of the tabs is busted off on the low frequency sounder, which looks fairly similar to the speaker strobe units. There were other models available, such as like the speaker strobe units for voice evac, which would be the G4s, but also the GCs, which is also shared with the horn strobes. You got your speaker strobe units. The G4 and G4LF are totally different. They have different back plates, as you can see. And also the back plates are different colors too. And then you also got your expansion plate for mass notification. So let me pause the video so I could pry the covers off of these devices. So I got the covers off of the devices. So let's start out with the G1R FHDVM. Let's start off with this one right here, the first generation Genesis. However, despite the G1R FHDVM and the first generation Genesis looking fairly similar, but they're not identical. You could see they use different backplates and circuit boards in different configurations. But the G1R FHDVM is multi-candela. This is how you This is how you select your candela. You pull out this jumper piece that's attached to the switch. Let me put the camera down so I can. You can slide it right up and down, but it's kind of hard to do, and I don't really like that. I don't really like how it's actually hard to do. Oh shit. Excuse me. And then you press it in, and there's this little arrow indicator that tells you what candela you have it set on. So, but however, with the first generation units, they're fixed candela. They were fixed candela. So, and there was no multi-candela models available, which had only two horns, which would be the H horn, which sounded like the rare H horn, which sounded like which sounded kind of like an integrity because it used the same sound file, and then the HO horn, which would be later named the HD horn when the second generation came out. Which, if I'm not mistaken, second generation Genesis horn strobes was when the speaker strobes got released. And everything was multi-candela, but it still had the EST logo like the first generations did. But it still had the logo, the company logo, like the first generations did, with the low frequency sounder. But with the but it also has jumpers where you can select your Oh, I just realized I don't have my G1F HD out. Oh well. So it also has jumpers where you can select your audio settings, which unfortunately are permanent. Specifically on the G1s, because since the jumpers are a part of the circuitry, and you would have to snip off a piece of a circuit board, and then, however, with the low frequency sounders, you could easily just resolder them. Same thing goes with the speaker strobe variants, but you got to be careful not to accidentally fry the circuit board. And with the speaker strobes for the GC series, I have no idea where the jumpers are at. I have no idea where the jumper for the strobe is. And then this is the high fidelity speaker. That's why you see it have a different appearance compared to the basic speaker, which is right there. Put the covers back on. Well, except for the low frequency, but also we also could. Here's your ceiling mount. I have to have it taped on because this thing broke off. This candela indicator thing broke off the switch by accident. And I have no idea where the jumper is. Well, there's the jumper right there. It's a small little jumper, and unfortunately, it's jumper 1. As you can, but unfortunately for the G1s, and now I figured out with the GCs. Oh, there's the cover. It's actually permanent because it's part of the circuit, because the circuit board is part of the circuit, because the jumpers are a piece of the circuitry that has to be chipped off. So where's the arrow? So with the G1s and G4s, you just put the bottom in first and snap the cover on with the top. Here's the G4s. Same thing goes right with this right here. Same thing goes with the speaker strobe right here as well, which is also a G4. And however, with the ceiling mount unit, you just place the cover on the device, find the two arrows and line them up together, and slide it till they're no longer next to each other, and it locks the cover in place. But normally I would use the screwdriver to open this up, but the tab accidentally broke off. So that's going to be when I actually have to call out some parts of the Genesis series. Now, with the expansion plate, same idea as the speaker strobe, your strobe jumper, your multi-candela selection switch would be on the bottom of every G4 unit. and then you put the bottom in first like you normally would. With physical features, you could also, for the G1s, chime strobes, remote strobes, and horn strobes and remote horns, you can actually get a trim plate to allow for single gang, for double gang, or full 4-inch mounting on a 4-inch or double gang back box. So it's really, and it also gives it a nice design. So, however, and then there's your Candela selector right there behind the window. So I will say some. So, however, there are some handicaps when using these devices, and that is, and one of the things I don't like, that a lot of collectors don't like about this. In Fire Alarm Dude 5967 actually called out the Genesis at one point on one of his videos because one, they're cheaply made. Some of the device is cheaply made, which I can definitely see why, since it was all assembled in China. Since everything was assembled since the devices were assembled in China, which is something I don't really like. I really wish they would assemble everything in the United States, so that means they're actually more sturdy. And then there's another thing that I really do not like about these that I will call out, is the fact that their circuit boards are polarized sensitive. So that means you cannot exceed up to 30. You could also notice on the newer Genesis units, starting from second generation to the fifth and final generation, which is what my G1F HD is. You can see we can see if it'll focus it in right. Gosh damn it. You know what? Well, somewhere on the information tag, why not just show it on the G4S7 VM, although it's not really UL listed because of its design. Because of the design scheme it takes. As you can see, it's regulated 24 volts DC or 24 volts full wave rectified. Regulated 24 volts DC or full wave rectified, because these can also take full wave rectified, like system sensor notification appliances from System Sensor, Wheelock, and Gentex are, because because these can actually handle full wave rectified without any issues. But however, on the first generation units, you'll actually see it says 20 to 31 volts DC. In reality, they really need 16 volts in order to work properly. But the unfortunate part about it is, on the first generation Genesis devices, the information tag lies, because you can only go up to 27 volts. Going up to 30 volts will fry the circuitry on these devices. Will fry the circuitry on these devices. Focus it in, damn it, phone. So, however, you can only go up to a certain amount, and that is 27 volts. Which it's because you really should not go up to 31 volts, period, because like I said, I've even seen it before too. I've even seen the result of it. It was on one Fire Alarm Enthusiast YouTube channel. I don't know if he's still he's still active on YouTube, or if the video that he had a G1RF HDVM that he accidentally fried because he actually went up to 30 volts. So, and these devices, like I said, these devices only lasted, this series only lasted about for at least 2 decades. Lasted for at least about, or for at least 2 decades. Which means that these devices are no longer, you can no longer, these devices are discontinued because of the new Genesis LED series, which I felt like which was the most creative on. Because I really like the creativity of the GC series. But I know there were a lot of complaints about the GC units of the Genesis LED successors because it had 4 strobe units, which I don't really got a problem with, but since it actually had a dome shape and the horn was actually in the middle, or the speaker, because speaker strobe units do exist as well, and they actually use the same physical features in this. And if I'm not mistaken, the speaker's about like the size of the actual is about the size of a horn, and it's a more unique, different, and it is high fidelity. Edwards did make that clear that it's also a different type of high. Edwards did make that clear on one of their Facebook posts that it's also a high fidelity, that it's compatible with high fidelity messages too. That it's also partly a high fidelity speaker, like what this Genesis ceiling mount speaker strobe is, because it actually has a high fidelity speaker in there. Why? But the reason why I needed 4 strobe units, because in order to comply with NFPA codes, to be compliant with NFPA codes, it has to flash in all 3. In order for it to be ceiling mounted, it has to flash in all 360 degrees. However, with one strobe, since it actually has a dome shape in the audible components in the metal, how are you going to make it flash in all 360 degree angles? I know you're not going to, I know. So that's why 4 strobe units are required to do so. So, yeah. And it also, however, it also, and they also had, and also the horn strobe units, both G1, G4, and GC, also have, instead of actually having these not so user friendly jumpers that you have to cut with a utility knife in order to select your audible settings. That's not good. It does not, which thank goodness it does not have those pain in the ass jumpers anymore. But therefore, so it actually now has the slider switch that allows you to select your audio that way, which is a huge improvement on Edwards' behalf, which I'm very grateful for. While the Genesis LED series, which no longer have the Running Man cartoon, which, like I said, it's really it's one of the most creative. The GC is the most creative, and I'm very thankful that I got to see more. That I got to see not a very unique looking device, but I know Shane on Instagram doesn't like, also on YouTube, he doesn't even like the GC series because of the 4 strobe units. And he's been making complaints about it, and making a lot of complaints about it. But like I said, it's really, if it's going to be ceiling mounted, it is incentive to have 4 strobe units on the device, because it's dome shaped and the sounding components in the middle of the unit. So obviously what you're going to do. But it actually does feature a snap-on mount. The G4s and GCs use a snap-on of the Genesis LED series. Feature a snap-on device that's actually just like a Spectral or Advance, where you put the top in first and snap it with the bottom, but however the way it's secured is with a tab. Similar contrast to that of a Simplex Truler ES. Instead of a screw to secure it in place on the wall or ceiling, depending on what unit you're using. So, however, and there are some things that are missing from the Genesis LED series, like the chime strobes and the low frequency sounder strobes, because that's what made it actually. That's what actually, because low frequency sounder strobes are meant to comply with a new code that calls for a 520 hertz low frequency audio sound that wakes up people with that are deaf or have or that falls into any category with the hearing impaired. So I don't really like how cheaply made these devices are, because there's some instances where I broke off the tabs, where I broke off some parts, like such as the tabs on the right tab on the G4LF, and the tab that secures the cover on the GC in the GC remote strobe. But and in fact, I also managed to break off the two tabs by accident on this particular unit. So therefore the way it's actually intended to do it, you're supposed to stick your screwdriver. You're not supposed to go out like that. The way it's intended to do it, like Edwards intended the design to be, you just stick your screwdriver in and then just softly twist, and then the cover falls off. And then you take the cover off. That's the way it's intended to be. So, otherwise, if you're going to do it like that, you're going to most likely end up breaking the tabs by accident, and the cover is going to be no longer, and then it's no longer going to be, and the device is no longer going to be a UL listed device. Another thing that Fire Alarm Dude 5967 also called out on the G1 units is that the strobe is actually attaches to the cover instead of the actual signaling unit. So I've seen some instances, and I have seen this in person too. So let me demonstrate that real quick. Because you can see the lens is held on these two tabs. And I've seen some instances, especially majority of the time I've seen it on Instagram, where the lens is non-existent on the cover, and it does not have it's not on the cover right. So therefore, if you actually see a Genesis device that is like this, in the cover is actually a part of the, and the lens is part of the cover. So if you don't, attaches to the cover, and if you the problem is, there are some instances where the strobe falls off during maintenance. The strobe cut lens falls off during maintenance, and then therefore you no longer have a UL listed strobe, and that's a huge issue. And another thing I really need to call out on the Genesis series is that this Genesis speaker strobe, the G4S7VM, is not meant to look this way. It's not meant to look like a mass notification device, as it already looks like it. But I have seen a model that is very similar that uses the same base model number. But it's actually a G4S7 VMA, which looks fairly identical to this specific G4S7 VM. That is not even UL listed, because since it's not designed the way it's supposed to be, it doesn't meet the UL listing requirements. And Edwards did that with the GCVM remote strobe. They did it with the ceiling mount version of this, the GCS7 VM. They even did it with a red G1R VM. So I don't even know what, and I've even also been hearing stories that a G4R S7 VM, G4RF S7 VM actually had no fire markings like it was supposed to.